What's going on, everybody? It is Dr. Jamar Montgomery of drjamarmontgomery.com. And I'm here just to talk about a couple of things. First thing that I'm going to be talking about is a conversation, a recap of a conversation I had earlier today with a colleague of mine. And I was just basically saying about how we create these prisons in our minds. And my colleague pushed back on me. He was like, "Yo," he said, he's like, I hear what you're saying, but a lot of times when we have these situations in life, we feel we can't act like the situation's all in our head and that we don't face real problems and that uh, there isn't some external force that's pushing down on you, right? Like people talk about, oh, well, it's just your mindset. You have the wrong mindset. And I'm going to tell you that a lot of it comes down to your mindset. That doesn't mean that you don't face challenges. That doesn't mean that there aren't oppressive systems, that there aren't racist systems, that there aren't classist systems. But the difference between you and someone else that is successful is someone resolving in their mind that they are going to do it, that they are not going to quit, that they're not going to give up, that regardless of what happens, that they will succeed. And the conversation was talking about how BlackRock owns everything in the world, right? How BlackRock is this large asset management fund. Basically, what they do is they own like 2 to 3% of every company that's in the Fortune 500 or the S&P 500. They own a piece of it, 2 to 3% of it at least, and that gives them a lot of power. And people, he was like, you know, he's like, I'm not gonna act like, like it all can be solved with mindset. And I'm saying to him that all those things started off as ideas, right? Those started off as companies, but what determined whether or not they were successful or not was what if they were going to stop, if they were going to quit, if they were going to give up. And as ruthless as these people and these companies were when it came to becoming powerful and making sure that you were that you were subject to their power, is how ruthless and how determined we as people have to be when it comes to not being. I asked a simple question: would you rather be the victim or the suspect? And his answer was, I'd rather be the suspect. And I asked why. And he said, because at least if you're the suspect, there's a chance that you might get away. There's a chance that you won't be held accountable. But if you're the victim, then you've already got your issue. And I said, that's interesting. I said, the simple fact that you understand that it is better to be the suspect than the victim means that there is an advantage in taking action. There's an advantage in being ruthless. Why is there an advantage in being ruthless? As much as we would like to believe that life is fair, it isn't. As much as we would like to believe that all of our good deeds are acknowledged, they aren't. They're rewarded, but may not be acknowledged. But more importantly, this country, this society, and the world that we live in rewards ruthlessness. And there is very little pity for weakness. So, as much as we feel bad for people who are hungry, who don't have enough to eat, the last thing that we want to be is one of them. Hey, Lady Hope Vision. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me, and I appreciate y'all joining my broadcast today. Like I said, it's been a great day of just revelations and being able to kind of unwind. It's been a great day. Been a great day. But I was thinking about that because it's like People who have ethics and people who have morals, people who have consciences, uh, we often talk ourselves out of doing the things that will change our lives. We talk ourselves out of being ruthless. And there's a scripture that says, "The kingdom suffers violence, and the violent taketh by force." Well, what does that mean? Kingdom of God suffers violence, meaning that there's always attacks. There's always attacks. And the violent takes by force. So there's something that belongs to you, and violent people will try to take it. And you cannot have a peaceful reaction to people who are trying to do violence to you. Now, oftentimes we think of violence in the sense of physical violence, but there's also financial violence. And that is the greatest violence that can be done to you, because financial violence is the kind of violence that isn't overlooked. It is forgived. It's forgivable. Oh, what does financial violence look like? Boycotts. Boycotts is a method of financial violence. Cancellations, calling people's jobs, and things like that. That is a level of financial violence. And why is that important to know? Because there's financial violence that's being done to you on a daily basis in the terms of how high our interest rates are. What is that violence that's being done to you? The violence that's being done to you is that you aren't able to afford a house. The Lady Hope Vision said economic warfare is another name for it. Absolutely. There's warfare being done against you. There's a whole warfare campaign that's being done against you, and you don't even know it. I encourage everyone that, the thing conservatives have a thing about saying this victim mindset, and I get where they're coming from. It's just the way in which the term has been sensationalized really turns a lot of people off. And what I'm going to say is that doing for self and forcing the government and others to do right by you. Say that again. Doing for self and forcing others to do right by you. What does it mean to be do what does it mean to do right by you? That means to follow the laws, to follow the rules, right? And when somebody doesn't follow the laws and follow the rules, that they got to pay. They got to pay. As dedicated as these people are to disturbing your peace, to disturbing your happiness, to disturbing your finances, to disturbing your life, that's just how ruthless you have to be, and you can't feel no kind of way about it. That's the thing about it, right? Which brings me to my next point. You know, I catch a lot of flack because of my criticisms of Kamala Harris. And once again, I'm not making judgments on people if they vote for Kamala Harris, or if they vote for Donald Trump, or if they vote for RFK or Dr. Cornel West. I'm just happy that people are voting and involved in the political process. But I also want people to understand the repercussions of their decisions, right? There's repercussions that come with voting for Donald Trump. There's repercussions that come with voting for Kamala Harris. There's repercussions for voting for any of these candidates. And you really have to prioritize what is most important to you. What is most important to you? For me, I always think about my constitutional rights, and particularly my First Amendment and also my Second Amendment. And the thing about Kamala Harris presidency is that they have made it clear about their stance on gun rights. Now, a lot of people ask me. A lot of people know that I'm a firearms advocate, but I'm not a. I'm not a. I like to do what's prudential. What's prudential, right? What's prudent. What's prudent. I want prudent and smart gun laws, right? I'm not for someone disarming me. I'm not for the government disarming me, yet having to worry. I'm not for the government disarming me and then putting all of my protection, all of my hope, all of my faith in a law enforcement system that cannot be there for me 100% of the time. And in fact, I don't want them there 100% of the time, right? Because with the level of freedom, with the level of freedom, if you sacrifice your freedom for security, then you don't you don't deserve freedom, because someone will always find a way of making another boogeyman and making you dependent on them, making you dependent on their protection. And as an American citizen, that's not a place that you want to be. How is it that you're going to say that the police are a racist institution and that they're focused on killing black folks, right? And there's evidence that they do. How are you going to say that the police are racist, but then when something happens to you, you're dependent on the police to go and find those criminals? But the police doesn't necessarily operate in your best interest, or you don't trust the police to operate in your best interest, but you want to allow someone to remove your ability to protect yourself. Don't send me out into the. Have you listened to Tim Walz? He's pretty clear about the Second Amendment. Riri, help me understand what he's saying. In fact, if you want, I'll bring you up as a guest so that you can inform the audience. I have not heard Tim Walz's stance on the Second Amendment. It would be great to know what Tim Walz stance on the Second Amendment. But once again, I approach the Second Amendment from this perspective. What does the Second Amendment say? A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Point blank, period. Right? My thing with the Second Amendment is that if you're going to have gun control, then gun control also has to apply to the police. It can't just apply to us as citizens. Us as, non-sworn personnel, because police officers are citizens as well. They just happen to be sworn personnel. They happen to hold positions of public trust and public power and authority. So if you're going to say that I as a citizen shouldn't have it, as a non-sworn citizen shouldn't have it, then you as a police officer shouldn't have it. Why? Lady Hope Vision said it perfectly. Checks and balances. Why? Because I, as a citizen, am a check on my government. See, we think about checks and balances in just terms of, oh, I'm the legislative branch checks is a check and balance on the executive, and the judicial is a check and balance on the judicial, and vice versa. So you got the judicial, the legislative, and the executive, and they all check and balance each other. But that's the government. Who checks the government? The people. That's you and I. That's the informed voter. That's those of us who are paying attention to our government, who are interested in our government, who are making active moves in our government. Speaking of which, if you're interested in learning more about civics and learning more about what your actual rights are and how your government actually works, please send me a DM. I will send you a copy of my civics course. Before I release it out to everybody, I want to give my audience a sneak peek at it. Let me know what you think. It has some quizzes in there. It was the course that I taught when I was teaching political science at Southern University. How to not get screwed by your government. But helping people understand what their rights are, how their government actually works, and how to be more informed and involved citizens. I'm just not for voting for somebody that is trying to take my rights away. I'm not for somebody that's trying to disarm me. I'm not for that. I'm just not for that. Um, if I don't want the police in my neighborhood all the time, I only want the police to show up when I call them. Twist me over. What's going on? What rights? Second Amendment rights, gun rights, firearms. Yep, yep. Any candidate that's talking about reducing my gun rights, I'm looking at them sideways. And particularly, once again, if you trust the police, then if black people take this weird position, they take this weird position. I feel like we don't really understand how our government works. We don't really understand who really controls our presidents, who controls a lot of the people that are involved that are involved in our government. Um, so it's like we expect for we expect for Kamala Harris to look out for our interests, for Black people's interests, and what is Black people's interests? That's the question. Me personally, I believe that Black people's interest is in better education, better jobs, better economy, and uh, entrepreneurship. The only jobs that you have, the only jobs that can't be taken away from you are jobs that you create. And when you as a black person are not an entrepreneur, or you're not working for black entrepreneurs or black businesses, um, then you're not working a black job. Point blank period. We put a lot of the responsibility we put a lot of our own responsibility on others. It's our responsibility to make sure our communities are safe places to be. It's our responsibility to make sure that um, that our children are well educated. And should the government be helping us? Absolutely. But the government is only going to do what you force them to do. You gotta force them. You gotta put pressure on them. And we keep thinking that the government's just gonna act right because they're the government. No, they're not. They're gonna respond to who's putting pressure on them, who's making it challenging and difficult for them. Do you expect whites to look out for your interests? Um, do I expect whites to look out for my interests? The interesting part about that question is that white folks in America have a lot of shared common interests with black folks. The problem is when we make it a race thing. And what do I mean make it a race thing? When I say, all right, I only want this thing for black folks. No, I want better economics and better entrepreneurship opportunities for everybody. But since I am black, right? Since I am black, since my children are going to be black, since my children are black and will be black, I'm looking out for what I want for them from a cultural perspective, right? But I have something in common with somebody that's white, because not only is my identity is not just as a black man, my identity is as an entrepreneur, as an engineer, as a lawyer, as a businessman, as an innovator, as a speaker, as a gun owner, right? All these different identities that encompass me. So there's multiple interests that I have, right? So what is it that I want as a black, what are my interests as a black person? That's a good question. I would say, what are my interests as a black father? I want my children to so that's a yes? Absolutely. Absolutely. I would want a white person to look out for my interests, not as a black person, but as a person that might have shared interests with me. So what are those shared interests? The race thing is doesn't have to be something that divides us. It just shows, hey, black people look at it from this perspective, but white people want their children to have good schools. White folks want their children to be educated. White folks want to have better jobs. That's not just black folks that want that. White folks want that too. The problem becomes is if you only want it for black folks. The problem becomes if you only want it for white folks at the exclusion of everybody else. Utilizing government resources that we all pay into. You ain't gonna take my. So the whites are in control of your interests. I don't know what you're asking, and I would encourage for you to come up on live instead of being in the comments. That allows for a much more engaging and fruitful dialogue. So if you're willing to come up, I'm more than welcome to invite you. Just sent you the invite. I don't want to misconstrue or misunderstand what you're saying. What's going on?
Yeah, how you doing, bro?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, Yeah, I'm just trying to listen to you. I'm just trying to figure out where you say about the. I'm just kind of confused about whether you're saying like black people can't do this or that. I'm trying to understand where you're coming from.
Okay. I wasn't saying that black people can't do anything. Um, I guess the my question would be for you is at what point in time did you come in so that I can make sure that I answer your question clearly.
At what point did I come in?
Yeah.
I don't understand what you mean. Come in is what? I'm the one. I'm the one that asked you. Do you expect the white to look out for your interests?
Do I expect white people to look out for my interests? Um, do I expect white people to look out for my interests as what? As a father? That's not limited to white people. Do I?
Well, as far as as far as your life, your financial, all that.
Do I expect white people to look out for my interests as an entrepreneur? That's not limited to being white or black.
Okay. Well, basically I'm trying to ask you because you kind of put it in a way that that black people can't really look out for their interests. That's what I was getting from you.
I believe that was some miscommunication. I wasn't saying that black
Okay.
people can't look out for their interests. I'm saying that black folks in general don't necessarily have uh, a concerted interest or concerted agenda that necessarily, let me put it like this, that is specific to black folks outside of reparations, right? Um, However, there are plenty of interests that black people share with other groups that we could take advantage of basically having those shared interests. Those shared interests are having a better economy, having better education, having better entrepreneurship, right? How that looks in the black community is up to us. And I would say that one of the greatest challenges of our community is that uh, we don't know our butthole from our elbow sometimes. And
Well,
go ahead.
well, it seems to me that I don't want to sound. I'm just going to put it out there and say what I think. It seems when black people get together and do something, start their own businesses and things, the whites shut it down.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
throughout history, that's the way it's always been.
Yep. 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 And one I would say that one of the reasons why that continues to happen is because we aren't ruthless like other groups are in terms of protecting in terms of protecting our businesses, right? So we don't
Well,
even
I would.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I would say we're just outnumbered.
I would in some places I would agree with you. I have a big challenge with that, especially coming from a place like Louisiana, where in some places black folks are the numerical majority. We just can't get our act together.
Mm,
So I definitely understand where you're coming from, but just in some of my experience, it was just a lack of black folks actually showing up, a lack of black folks actually caring and being able to connect the dots to the bigger picture.
mm. And why do you think that is?
Why do I think that is? Because we don't recognize how free that we actually are. And we don't take responsibility and we don't take accountability for the things that are within our control. And we make a lot of excuses and we don't have our priorities together. And granted that life is more difficult for black men and black women, the fact that life has been more difficult means that it makes us much stronger than anybody else, and we're not utilizing our strength in the way that we really should.
Because it's kind of confusing because, I come from a generation where, I was always taught you had to work, 3, 4 times harder than the white person. And that is automatically kind of a shutdown already. Because I've had jobs and things that and just because, I got shut down just because I was black. It didn't matter how hard I worked, no matter what the job was and how good it was or whatever. Well, you're black, so that's it, and you're not getting ahead.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's kind of self defeating there in a way, but yeah, I think black people just have to hang in there, and you need to because the whites are in control. I mean, we're just outnumbered, and
yeah,
that's it. And you look at the demographic, you look at the situation. They have most of the billionaires are white.
yep,
All the people in power are white, and they're gonna keep control, and that's it. Hate to say that. I mean, you look at people like all these rappers, all these people making all this money, and they making lots of money, and they doing all these things. But once they start saying, "Hey, I need to do it this way," it's oh no, we're not going to let you do this. So they start taking your money away. They're only going to allow you to have so much money, you know, and that's a shame. You know what I mean?
I definitely understand where you're saying where you're coming from, and I share some parts of your sentiment. You said something very critical that it's self defeating, right? Which means that it defeats itself. That it's our own thoughts about what our experience is, and this for me, right? I had my law license taken in Louisiana, right, and this was by a panel of judges of 6 white judges and 1 black judge, and the only person that didn't join in and taking my license was the black judge, right? The Supreme Court justice, the black chief. She was the chief Supreme Court justice of Louisiana, and she was the only black person and a black woman that was on that panel, and she didn't agree with them taking my law license, right? So um, that was very devastating to me, but I still had to figure out a way, and I still had to fight, right? And if I would have allowed that to be the end all be all for me, then that would have been it. Was I depressed? Yes, absolutely. Then here's the cold part. I was running for office during the time. They took my law license 30 days before elections. 30 days.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like tell me they ain't working against you on purpose without telling me they working against you on purpose.
Right.
Then and the what goes on with the law licenses is public information, but it's not necessarily publicized, right? Tell me why I was on the news within 16 hours of my law license being taken. So not only was it devastating, but it was also a little embarrassing, right? And it was depressing. I went through that, and I was feeling like a loser. I was feeling down, and I was beat up. That was my main source of income, right? But I still had to pivot. So when you talk about you have to work twice, two and three and four times as hard, I'm with you. The fact is that regardless of what they throw at us as black folks, as black men, the if we get it resolved in our system that we will not quit, that's what makes us powerful.
Right.
That's what makes us powerful. And if more of us are thinking that way, and more of us are standing up and refusing to lay down, right? Refusing to lay down. That's what brings us pride. That's what brings us confidence, and that's what makes us men.
You know, yeah, I see what you're saying also, and I think the way the black man and black people have been brought up and taught and trained. I mean, because we call each other the N word. That's
Yep.
ridiculous.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. We're trained to call each other the N word, and and the racists or the white people just sit back and just watch us do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's sad, really.
Yep.
It's really sad, and I think we should just train ourselves and start not calling ourselves that
Yep.
for a start, because we're doing, we're being racist to our own selves.
Self-defeating, self-racist,
Yeah.
all of that. So that's what that's been my whole message, is about the things that we do to ourselves is what's most devastating, right? And the mental prisons that we create for ourselves. Is there racism out there? Absolutely. You know what I mean? Is there oppression out there? Absolutely. But what are we telling ourselves about ourselves, and about whether or not we're powerful, whether or not we're important, whether or not we are worthy, right?
Mm,
That's what really matters. Cause you
yeah.
you can you can hide from everything else, but you can't hide from yourself.
Right. It's almost like we're crabs in a bucket, man. It's like once somebody see a black person get up top, and you want to pull them back down. You
Well,
know, it's and I will never understand that. I will never understand that. Once a black person gets to the top, it's like, oh, because I grew up in a an all black neighborhood, and I grew up in an all black neighborhood. And when I grew up in the hood, and I can remember growing up in the hood and everything like that. And then my mom, her job got better and everything like that, so we moved. Then we moved to the all white neighborhood, and it was a real culture shock. And I went to a all white high school, and there was like three blacks that went there, and I was like one of them. And it was back in the '80s. I experienced all this racism and this and that, and I dealt with that. It was a real culture shock. And then I went back to my old neighborhood to talk to my friends. They were like, "Hey, man, you 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 think you're all that because you go to that all white school?" I'm like, man, it's like they didn't accept me. They kicked me out. Oh man, you think you're all this hanging around those white boys and all this and all that? I was like, man, come on. Then I go back to white men. They're calling me the N word. It's like it was. It's a culture shock. I was caught in the middle,
well, you
so
were
it's really hard.
you were a reflection. You were a reflection of what your friends could have been, had different choices been made and different opportunities been availed to them. And then you were a reflection of the ignorance of the white folks that you were around, right? That
Right.
all you that's all you did. And so the thing is how you felt about yourself is what was going to determine how you were going to be able to navigate in that. But Zulu, man, I really appreciate you for coming up, man, and thank you for
Thank you.
sharing.
All right.
I'm go-
And you have a good one, man.
all right, you too. Thank you, man.
Bye bye.
See, there we go. Um, Always glad to have folks that come on and share their experience. And once again, it's how we feel about ourselves, how we view our struggles, how we view our challenges, is the difference. The narratives that we have told ourselves about our experiences. If this would have been 2 years ago, oh man, I would have been so ashamed to talk about what happened with me with my law license. I would have been so ashamed. I wouldn't even talked about it at all. But the thing is that in sharing your story, in sharing your story, uh, you get to rewrite that narrative. You get to rewrite what that story means to you. You get to rewrite the story, and you get to rewrite what it means to you. Um, but yeah, you know, the, the these things happen to us. These things happen to us, and how do we respond to them? Do we respond in power, or do we respond weakly? That's our choice. And how we perceive that situation, how we think about that situation, is going to determine how we act about it. So if black folks stop seeing themselves as victims, as if we stop seeing ourselves as all these things are outside of our control, well, there are things inside of your control, and control those things. Lady Hope Vision said, but the people in power have planned their extension into it or grasped up it for years through families and business strategies for decades and centuries ahead. Well, guess what? Obviously they're doing something right, so we should learn from them and do the same thing. Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm not saying that it's going to happen overnight, but what I am going to say is that being consistent, being persistent, and being ruthless about it, you will. It will happen. If we already tell ourselves that it's not going to happen, then there's no need for us to even to strive for it. That's the thing, is that the belief in ourselves has been killed, and I know what it feels like to be in that place, to not believe in yourself, to not believe that you're capable. So you just stop trying because you don't want to deal with the pain of disappointment. That's painful. It's painful. It's uncertainty. It's stress. It's all of that. I get it. 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 That's why I'm empathetic towards I'm empathetic towards my people. I understand what we're going through. I know what we're going through. It's just that we just have to stop accepting excuses of ourselves. We got to stop giving ourselves excuses. Right? We got to stop giving ourselves excuses. And the thing is that I like doing it on this platform because it's like I ain't trying to pander to I'm not trying to pander to anybody. I'm just saying, like, yo, we can do this. We can do this. Why can't you have a tech company? I'm meeting black founders who got tech companies. I'm meeting people who are doing amazing things. Why aren't you one of them? You can be it. You can do it. You can make it. Beautiful thing. We have a beautiful life and beautiful opportunities in front of us, and I just want us to take advantage of it. Just want us to take advantage of it. But I hope y'all have a great evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Uh, like I said, if you're interested in getting my civics course, hit me up in my DMs. Give you guys first access to it. It'll be on my website pretty soon, drjamarmontgomery.com. Jesus Christ is Lord. Go spend some time speaking to Jesus Christ and spend some time with him. If you do not know him as your personal Lord and Savior, then I would encourage for you to go and get with it. But Jesus is King. I love y'all. Y'all have a great evening. I appreciate y'all.